if you don't know, we do these team previews. We go most important player. Player we'll be talking about at the end of the season. Best lineup, best case scenario, worst case scenario, and the over under. Most important player. I'm just going to get this out of the way, Brendon. I told you before we started recording that I had a James Harden in a category, and I just wanted to get it out of the way and then probably not try to talk about him again. It's James Harden. They have to get something out of this guy in one way or the other. They just kind of have to. They have to either make this work, which doesn't seem likely. I can't imagine that's going to happen at this point. You can't really walk back, going to the club. First telling a group of Chinese teenagers that Daryl Morey is a liar, and then B, putting it on signs at the club. You can't twice. You can't roll that back. It's well, and I don't think James Harden.
I know we don't want to get into the rumor mill of all of it, but there was pretty concrete reporting from Shams Charania today about the extent to which Harden has actually participated in camp. We all kind of patted him on the back for showing up, and then it turns out he actually is hardly participating. He hasn't even attended some of these preseason games. He is apparently only scrimmaged with the team one time. So the truce that he seemed to suggest when he arrived, I think, was maybe not quite on the up and up. So I don't know.
Shocker.
What that means is in terms of do we see him on the court next week, but it's not looking good. I have a question for you. You said that they need him in one way or the other. How different is their ceiling with or without him?
I think it depends on what they get, but I think
well, no,
if
I'm
they
just
keep
saying,
him
let's say he holds out for now, and it's more of a February trade. Because, yes, agreed. That's the type of conversation that's obnoxious to have about Terrence Mann and what pick swaps and whatever. Not important. I'm just saying, let's say Harden with this roster or no Harden with this roster for the next few months.
I think it does lower their ceiling, even if he's not the best player, the best version of himself anymore, even if he's not at his peak anymore, struggles to get by guys in the same way. I mean, we saw the miraculous game he had in the playoffs, and you just need someone to not make Joel Embiid do everything. You need someone to handle the ball and to bully other guards and be James Harden. Yes, is he a top 5 player anymore, top 7 player anymore? No, but he's still really good, and you're just going to be worse off without him. It's going to put a lot of pressure on other guys to step up and do stuff, and it's going to be a lot of projection to see if that can even happen.
You didn't really answer the how much.
I would say they're 30% worse.
I'm pretty optimistic that they can stay afloat. I also just think the types of pieces that they seem to be likely to get back, even if they get their wishes, to me don't actually really change the upside or sort of the even the baseline level of performance that they're going to get this year, because I don't think Terrence Mann or some of these other pieces are really Harden replacements. Terrence Mann is very similar to DeAnthony Melton, very similar to Tyrese Maxey, even Patrick Beverley. They have 3 Terrence Mann types already. Norm Powell, maybe he helps. Maybe Nicholas Batum helps just from a lineup flexibility standpoint and some other things like that. But I tend to feel pretty good that this team can stay afloat, and I don't know if Harden actually makes that big of a difference. But my most important player is Joel Embiid. Not exactly a surprise. The reigning MVP. I've mentioned this a few times as we've talked through the Harden situation over the summer, but just to remind people how good Embiid was the year that Simmons was holding out, he had almost identical stats to his MVP season. Slightly less efficient, but an identical usage rate, a slightly higher rebound and assist rate, and carried the team to a top 4 seed pace in the Eastern Conference without Ben Simmons. And of course, by that point, James Harden was not a Sixer yet. There was also no Tyrese Maxey on this team, right? It was Seth Curry and it was, some lesser role players. They didn't really have a backup center that season, whereas now they have 4 for whatever reason. So I just feel like we're underestimating how high the floor can be just by way of having Joel Embiid on your team. Now, his defense has taken a little bit of a step back in recent seasons as he's had to do more offensively, or maybe just chosen to, whatever way you want to think about his MVP campaigns the past few years. I don't know if you can expect the defense to return to his peak form maybe ever again, but especially not in a season where he's maybe having to do more than he even did last year with Harden. So that I think is one area you could see the team take a little bit of a hit. But all of that said, Embiid may not be perfect. He may not be the best player in the NBA like an MVP award should indicate that you are. But I think he is somebody to me that is pretty close to a like walking 45 wins with a competent roster as you can find in the league.
Yeah, I think there's just always the question of health, which obviously isn't like fair and fun to talk about, and also just I thought this might be the year, Brendon, where in some way he didn't have to just go full go to just maximize his team, and that just doesn't feel on the table, and that bums me out for him a little bit.
Yeah,
to be honest.
No, that's fair, but I don't know if I think that's the thing about the situation with the trade is it's allowed us to kind of like make everything about the Sixers about this Harden trade, and that's part of why I wanted to make the case of Embiid being good enough to raise their floor separate from him. But I also think that the upside question isn't really dependent on Harden either. They have this Tobias Harris contract. They don't necessarily have this great blue chip player. We can talk about Tyrese Maxey very shortly, I think. But what was the course of action that could have happened at any point from like last trade deadline until now that would have made Embiid's life easier this season? I don't know if there is one.
I don't know if there is one. At least one that was available to them and was kind of fit. I mean, that fit the parameters of Daryl Morey. Like I think there's like a different world where like a non-Daryl Morey led team would have done something different than what has happened here. But like obviously that's just not the reality.
In what way?
Right? Like Daryl Morey. I just think Daryl Morey is such a careful, cautious GM in a way that I think is often very smart. Right? He's got
patient.
like a very
I would say patient.
Yeah, okay. Patient's a good word. I think other GMs might have really like forced the issue with some kind of trade before. Like,
but it would probably be a worse value trade than what Morey's going to end up getting.
That's what I'm. But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying I agree with that.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting to think about the paths because you could have taken a trade this summer. Probably would have been less. It sets you up to get the next superstar less easily, but everybody's probably a little happier. The team's a little deeper. It's the same thing we talked about with Ben, and I guess that sort of worked out, but yeah, I don't know. I want to talk about one more thing with Embiid because the turnovers get a lot of attention with him. I think that is a little bit of I don't think he's a great passer. I don't think that he is some sort of plus advantage creator by setting teammates up. But I also think we are in an era where somebody playing basketball the way he does gets misconstrued as like his own shortcomings. Posting up leads to turnovers. That's part of the reason other NBA players don't do that anymore. Other NBA teams don't do that anymore. Like you look at Shaquille O'Neal's best seasons, his turnover rate by the end of the Lakers run into the Miami time, and then obviously it got out of hand by the time he was close to retirement, but it was higher from 2003 on than what Embiid's was last year when that was supposedly one of the biggest problems in his game. So when you isolate and post up as much as he does, that just is going to happen. And so it just sort of is a fact of what he is. And I guess you can have an opinion about whether his style is going to be conducive to winning a championship. But as we just got done talking about, to me, it's like he's never been put into a position to actually test that because he's never been optimized with the guys around him. So not to be just a diehard Embiid truther here, but I do just think a lot of the way we talk about him is pretty screwed up. And I think this will be an opportunity season for him to kind of reprove that he's great, independent of a lot of other stuff. And if they can make the other stuff even better over the course of the next few months, like we're really in for something cool.
I just want 1 year for Joel Embiid where I don't feel like he's having to just like other superstars. I think to their team's credit have just had like easier times with some of this. Like I think Jokic is just like he's obviously had to carry a ton, but then their whole system is kind of built on supporting him as best they can, and year in and year out, kind of keeping things replenished. Sometimes it just feels like Embiid has to just kind of do a ton to maximize like in perfect situations. And obviously, like, look, that's what happens when you do things like sign Al Horford because he like beat you up in the playoffs or whatever, right? Like you did dumb things, you're gonna have to do drastic things to get out of it. I would just like some easiness for one Joel for a little bit of time. All right, player we're going to talk at the end of the season. Brendon, I went weird with this because I think Tyrese Maxey is maybe the easy like layup answer to hit here, and I kind of think you're going to pick him. Is that right?
I did pick Tyrese Maxey.
Okay, let's start there, and then we'll come back to me. Why did you pick Tyrese Maxey?
In short, for the reasons you pointed out, I think he's already kind of surpassed the hype cycle. We know who Tyrese Maxey is. He is likely to get a max contract or very close to it next summer when he hits unrestricted or when he hits restricted free agency. But they don't have a lot of other young talent. But just to give the Tyrese Maxey pitch, and I think he's a pretty interesting player in and of himself too, separate from trades and all the other drama surrounding this organization. He's just a very interesting test case of how good he can be and how good a team built around him can be at 6'2". You know, I look at him and I feel like he's a player who I don't want to say is maxing out what he is already, because that would just be a little bit narrow-minded, I think, unimaginative. He's only 22, but he averaged 20 points per game last year on 48% shooting, upped his three-point volume by a lot, and made 43% of those for the second straight season. Just a killer shooter. And just plays a style of basketball, even with all that productivity, that is very conducive to winning, very team-oriented. Came off the bench last year and didn't miss a beat. Has an energy and tenacity to his game on both ends that I think allows him to make up for some of the size deficiencies. I just do wonder what more the ceiling can be. I think there's passing upside, clearly, but he's at 4 assists a game. You know, not every assist is created equally, but where is the next jump really going to be there? Is he an 8 assist a game guy? Don't necessarily think so. But where I look, Chris, is the free throw shooting. I think with how forcefully he plays and how athletic he is, even at a smaller size, I think that there's a lot of meat on the bone for him to drive more and get to the free throw line more, and that'll just make everything a little bit easier, allow him to be more of a focal point of an offense. And so I think that's kind of what I'm hoping for this year, and maybe the leap that I'm projecting him to make, even though he's already a very positive NBA player, even at 22.
Yeah, there's just, I think there is creation. I think at the rims, I think the free throw stuff is all there, and it's meat on the bones, and it's hard. I mean, he's at a size where that can be tricky, and it's like cleaning the glass, for instance, like classifies him as a combo guard because he is. He's not like a traditional 6'1" point guard who can score. He is a combo guard. I think that's why, like, even with some defensive concerns, that's where the Harden stuff made a lot of sense. Like, that partnership made some sense because Harden can do the point guardy stuff. So a lot on the table for him, but it's year 4. If there was a leap, wouldn't be shocking, right? Like, he's young. It's there to some degree. The assist, I'm curious to see how his passing looks this year. I think, particularly just the assist percentage as like a number I'm going to be tracking with him. Was it 16.6% last year? It was 3% lower than other years, but I can't imagine there's a world where the Sixers are good and it's low for him again this year. So that's where my brain went. All right, so for me, I just said either Tobias Harris or DeAnthony Melton, because I think if this roster, whether they can't trade Harden at all, whether it's just like a weird year and they need to maximize what they have in a way that's to kind of get to next summer and star chase, I think one of these two guys are going to have a big year, or in Harris's case, kind of like a y'all must have forgot. I'm still pretty good kind of season. I think that's kind of what you would need from Tobias Harris, and maybe a new coach brings something out of one of these guys that Doc Rivers couldn't. So I just looked at those two guys I like, guys that are competent role guys for them, but maybe one of them elevates in some way, and we're like, dang, forgot, D'Anthony Melton had a great year, or Tobias Harris had a great year. Just to avoid, because Maxey one just felt like a layup. I wanted to maybe take a little bit of an errant three-pointer here and get some gunner shots off by just saying it's either going to be Tobias Harris or D'Anthony Melton who we're going to be thinking about at the end of the year.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be Melton. I don't think that there's much better he can be, personally. He shot 39% on 5 threes a game last year, had, and this is a compliment to him, had...
He's a good player.
One of the better, typically great defensive season. Maybe didn't have quite the offensive creation role, but I just don't think he's great enough at that you really should ask him to do that. And so, to me, that's what he is. He is, how old is he? 20. How is he only 24? That is wild. He's about to be 25. This is his age 25 season. That's his prime. I think obviously Harris is older even than that, but he's the guy to me with less ball handling on the team and the need to fill the offensive void that Harden is going to be leaving, even if they trade him. It sort of has to be Harris. I think to go back again, though, to that season when Ben was holding out, you saw a pretty strong Tobias year that year too. So by the end of the year, not so much, but I know that stretch early on, he did pick it up. And I think that there is more there, even if he's a somewhat limited player. I think he can take more, pull up mid-range jumpers. I think that he can up his three-point volume off the ball. I think that he can anchor some second units as a scorer, even at age 30, 31. So I would pick Harris between those two.
I would lean there as well, just because there's a proven track record, but I just wanted to throw out another option. And I like D'Anthony Melton as just a guy that I think can be on good teams as a defender, as a shooter. So I just wanted to slip his name in here. Because I kind of it's funny that I don't love everything on this team, but I like some of the role guys enough where I'm like, huh. But we'll see. All right, best lineup. Just going to punt a certain bearded guy out of this. Mm-hmm. Have to. Maxey, Melton, Harris, Tucker, Embiid. I think that's it. I think it's your two guards. I think it's Harris as a hub in some ways. It's Tucker to rebound and defend and be PJ Tucker and take less corner threes than you would like. And Joel Embiid, ever heard of him? I think that's it.
The interesting thing, too, to bring up with the Harden talks separate from Harden, though, is it sounds like PJ Tucker is one of the things being talked about.
Yes.
And so that's curious to me, and that's part of why the Batum inclusion could end up being big for the Sixers. You can't leave that position unattended to. You can't play too small. I actually thought about Kelly Oubre as my guy we're going to be talking about by the end of the season. I think that he is a pretty solid pickup for this team. Good cutter, can make spot-up threes well enough. Always has the shot selection issues, and no team he's ever been on seems to want to keep him, but I think he could have a pretty good season, kind of filling in the forward spot if they need it. Yeah, last year the best lineup was one lineup had a massive volume, which was Harden, Melton, Harris, Tucker, Embiid. Surprising that Maxey's not in there a little bit. They had another high volume lineup with Maxey over Melton. That also was a pretty big positive, an even bigger positive than the Melton lineup, almost twice as good. And then their best lineup overall was actually with no Harden, Maxey, Melton, Harris, Tucker, Embiid. So again, some track record of things we're going to see this year working. And I think I probably lean that one, Maxey, Melton, Harris, Tucker, Embiid. If Tucker's not in there, then, again, we're not going to get too deep down the rabbit hole, but maybe it's Batum, maybe it's Marcus Morris. Frown. I don't really love that, but somebody like that. There's also
Brendon,
no George Niang on this team anymore. So that's another.
Yeah, they're going to miss. I think they'll miss Niang shooting, even if the rebounding and what else he provided is a real question. Obviously, the other thing I would say is it's going to be 2050, and Marcus Morris is still going to be out here just being Marcus Morris and playing basketball.
Hopefully not.
Maybe they could go back to the Suns at some point, the two brothers, and like sign the split contract again.
Sure. No roster spots in Phoenix. Sorry.
A couple years.
Okay.
You never know.
I think Markieff is out of the league. No, he's on the Mavs. Got a late addition there. Congrats to Markieff.
Can't keep him down, baby. All right, best case. That was an intentional deep breath because I had a very hard time, Brendon, kind of projecting what this team is very fuzzy to me. So can you go best case first? Because I need some clarity from you to kind of get me to where I'm thinking here.
Sure. So 15th in offense last year, and let's see, probably not much higher than that in defense. They were 20th. No, this is preseason. Give me one moment as the stats go. I think that the best case for this team probably relies on, unfortunately for our analysis, a little bit of what they do get back for Harden, because it's not insignificant. But I think an ideal world is that they get some offensive pieces enough that Embiid can do a little bit less, to your point, to my point, maybe impact the game more consistently on defense rather than really just trying to take it up a notch in the fourth quarter like we saw him do last year. And they can be a little bit better than the sum of their parts. I think that's kind of what it is. Maybe Harris is a component of that. But, last year they were 3rd in offense, 10th in defense, to get that out there. I would expect they're probably worse on both ends. So that means the best case is probably a significant step down from the 54 wins and second round appearance that they had last year. Even the best case.
think conference final.
That's not the worst.
Yeah,
that's the best case. Is worse than that.
Yeah, I think best case is like they just get some luck and get to the conference finals, but it's probably more like second round and out kind of year. That's what it feels like is the ceiling.
That's familiar to them.
Tough. Barring Daryl Morey pulling something out of his hat that doesn't seem to be on the table.
It seems like Morey is arranging for this Harden trade to be a stepping stone to another trade. So that's part of why I'm not considering whatever they get back as like super consequential, because it doesn't seem like he is.
No, but you got to turn it around then. And then what's the timeline on that? I think it's all very fair. All right, worst case. I just think that Brendon all of this could hang over them. This could kind of just feel like a lost, wasted Embiid season to some degree, and they get taken out of round one as like the 6th seed in the East.
Yeah, I think that's all on the table. They probably, if they fall out of the top 10 on offense, if their defense is still kind of hovering around good but not great, that's, a team just above 500 at the end of the day. And with not a lot of the upside is what matters in the playoffs, right? And if they don't have those 40-point games from Harden and that type of thing, then it's just putting a real cap on how great they can be. So I agree. And kind of big picture, worst case is that they are beleaguered and followed around by trade talk all season. That every ESPN show just talks about how Embiid's going to leave, and that's just the chatter around the team, and that sucks.
Gotta say, really, really love the word beleaguered. It's a good word.
Pulled that one out. I don't know if I necessarily used it 100% right, but it worked well enough. I think I get like a 4 stars on that performance.
5 stars for me,
okay,
my guy.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. All right. Over under 49.5. I'm taking the under, Brendon.
Yeah, same.
I don't know how I would maybe just not touch this one, but the over on this one feels very unlikely. Amid what is going on in the East, amid what is going on with other teams that I think just have a little more solid footing right now, and I think that leaves them in a really, really tough spot.
51 teams statistically last year, so they overperformed that by 2.5 wins. You're asking them to get 7 wins worse or 6 wins worse, basically, to hit the under. But I don't know if they'll be. It's closer than maybe I thought at first glance. But I still am going to go the under because I just think the ground could kind of fall out in a way that not a lot of other teams could experience. And every year there's teams like that.